Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode here on Dangerous African Confessions HD. In this episode, we have an emotional and life-changing confession from one of our sisters. And in this confession, our dear sister shares with us what she experienced on the night that armed robbers came to their house, and what happened afterwards is something worth listening to. I will entreat you all to pay much attention to our sister's message to us all. I wouldn't want to take much of your time, so let us all go and listen what our sister has for us. Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload.
Hello brother, I greet you and your followers and subscribers. I have been listening to you and the confessions that do come up on your channel. And I decided to also share my own with you. One thing I should say is that this confession I am giving does not intend to tarnish anyone, but rather to serve as a point of hope for someone out there who will be listening to my story. I am a Ghanaian lady who is a proud and a devoted Christian. I come from a family of Christians, and my father happens to be an elder in our church. So definitely you can imagine how growing up will be like. Everything that we were allowed to engage in were things that had connections with Christianity, and nothing apart from that was not allowed in our house. You can talk of anything that will come to mind, that is the way we were trained. And for that reason, I have always seen my parents, especially my dad, as my hero. And I always said to myself that, I wish and pray that I will get a man with values such as my father. I was a part of the youth leaders in our church. And most at times, I will be called upon to read the Bible or do something in the house of the Lord. And this always gave me much joy, and it encouraged me to keep on keeping on in the Lord. One day, we had a 5-day convention in our church. And the program saw other men of God being invited to speak to the children of the Most High. I remember there was this pastor who came, and in the process of his ministration, called out a name and asked who that person was. I stood up and he called me to the altar. He said that the good Lord will reward me greatly, and so I should not go contrary to the teachings that I was receiving from my parents. Because just by being obedient to my parents and doing just as they have been telling me, the Lord will reward me greatly. He went further to say that part of the reward will be that I will get married to a great man of God, who the good Lord will use to do greater things in the country. And through him, everything that I desire in life will be made possible. He then said that part of the things I must do and keep in mind is to make sure I stay pure as I was, because I will be marrying a great man of God, like I said before. And what I bring mostly to that union will be, aside everything, my purity. So therefore, my husband must be the person who will first see my nakedness. So after the program, all my friends wanted to be like me. The burden that came with it was just too much for me. But as usual, my father was very instrumental in helping me shape my life even the more. When I do hear of Christian programs going on, it doesn't matter where it will be held, if only I do have the means to go, I will definitely go there, and under the anointing of the Holy Spirit. So, one of these days, one of my friends told us that there was a Christian musical concert going on in the biggest theater in the country. And so we all agreed to go and be a part of it, since it was a free entry event. So I told my parents as usual, and they agreed that we can go to the program. But my younger sister couldn't join us because she was not feeling too well to go out that evening. The program saw some of the finest gospel musicians we have in the country assembled to praise and worship the Most High. I must say that it was such a very powerful experience that night. When the program was over, and it was late, my friend asked me to go sleep over at her place. But I didn't want to, because my sister wasn't well and I wanted to be in the house. So we parted ways, and the place from her house to ours was far, and so I decided to walk and go home whilst she goes home by the car together with the other girls. On my way to our house, it was just about some few minutes walk to our house when a car passing by stopped. 2 men stepped out and approached me. Just the way they were looking scared me. At that particular moment, I knew I was in a very dangerous situation just judging from their appearance. One of them asked me where I was coming from, and I told him I was returning from a concert. He laughed and said that, "Oh, you are a church girl. There is nothing much to do here, other than to take your belongings." At that time, I had only my mobile phone with me, which was an iPhone X. When they took the phone, they searched me again and didn't find anything. He went to the one who was standing by the car, and after a while, he shouted that I come over to where he was standing. I feared that if I ran, they might catch me and do something bad to me. So, I obeyed and went to where he was standing. After some few minutes of interrogation and realizing he wouldn't get anything from me, he forced me into the back seat of the car and had his way with me. This situation was the most difficult and painful experience for me, because I had never seen a man before and the pains were just unbearable for me. After doing what he wanted with me, he asked me to go. And that night, I cried like everything was against me. That I was used as a reference point to others have to experience this ordeal. I washed down and even washed my cloth that I was wearing that night. I spent almost that entire night at the washroom. I couldn't believe everything that was happening and had happened to me. I knew at that moment that I had disappointed myself, my parents, and even my church, and my friends that looked up to me in one way or the other. The next morning, I took a decision not to talk about that bad experience with anyone. I just wanted everything to just go away without anyone making me remember that unfortunate experience. Things went on and everything was normal. And I also did not talk about it with anyone. Let me talk about how things got worse for me in my life, and where I felt God had abandoned me. You see, in about a month or so, I felt not very well, and so, just as we normally do in our house, I was taken to the hospital by my lovely mother. That was when I found out that I was pregnant. This came as a shock to my mother and myself. I had completely forgotten about what the man did to me that night. The shock and disbelief was all written all over my mother's face. She didn't utter any word at the hospital to me. When we were back in the car, she asked how it happened, and why I would want to bring shame to my family after everything. I saw tears coming from my mother's eyes as she asked me those questions. But the truth is that I couldn't come to terms to tell my mother what happened to me that night. She didn't tell my father that day about what she has discovered about me. She kept on asking me about it, till I felt I have to open up to her. And so, I told her about what I have experienced that day. When I told her, she even cried the more. So, later when she told my father about what has happened, that was the first day, I saw tears in my father's eyes. When he stood up from where we were all seated, that was the last time he spoke to me. The man who will never leave the house without talking to me had now become someone who does not even want to look me in the face. This was hurting my mother the most. And she asked me to go and apologize to my father. When she told him that I wanted to have a talk with him, he declined the opportunity to talk to him, and even apologize to him. His explanation was that I had brought shame to him and that everyone who will see me pregnant will start to ask questions about the one responsible for the pregnancy. And everyone in the church and our neighborhood, knowing that I am not a married person, will ask even more questions. These are some of the reasons that my mother told me that he has been complaining about. I couldn't bear the torture from my father. Anytime I see him quiet and thinking, you will see his eyes drown in tears. I knew how disappointed he was with me. I also knew how much he loved me and wanted me to reach greater heights. Since I couldn't bear to see him go through those emotions and even deciding not to talk to me, I took a decision to abort the pregnancy. That I told my younger sister, thinking it was the right thing to do. She informed my mother about my decision to go ahead with that. My mother pleaded with me not to commit such a sin in the eyes of the Lord. She said something that, maybe, just maybe, God was testing my faith in him. So she advised me not to do such a thing. One evening, my mother came in my room with tears. She told me that my father wants me to leave the house. He wanted me to go to my grandparents' house, so that I can avoid people seeing me in my pregnancy when it starts to appear bigger. That, he said, was his final decision, and nothing was going to change that. This part of my experience was something that was very difficult for me myself, my parents, and even my younger sister as well. I had no choice than for me to leave our house and go be with my grandparents. That day that I went away to my grandparents' house, something happened, and it was a Sunday. We went to church, and after the church service, my father went to our pastor's office. After he returned from the pastor's office, he got into his car and didn't talk to anyone. He just left without even saying anything to my mother. At that moment, I knew something bad had gone on. When we got home, he angrily yelled at my mother for not allowing me to leave the house, to a point where, for whatever reasons, our pastor had heard that I'm pregnant. This, he said, has compelled him to stand down as an elder who had allowed his daughter to get pregnant, and it does not serve well for other young women in the church. So they just can't allow him to continue as the elder of the church. He was asked to step down for some time. As soon as I heard him argue with my mother, I knew I was the reason, and hence I just packed my things and left the house straight to my grandparents' place. For almost all the 8 months of my pregnancy, I spent the days in my grandparents' house. I took my SIM card off my phone, and even switched the phone off. My mother and sister were talking to me through my grandfather's phone. I didn't want to explain anything to anyone, hence the decision for me to switch off my phone. I gave birth to boy, and even throughout my pregnancy, I came to a conclusion that God had disappointed me, and hence, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with church again. I stopped going to church. Obviously I couldn't go to where I decided to worship with my family. And so, my grandmother tried to convince me to go to their branch, but I decided never will I step foot in the church again. 5 years after me giving birth, I still had never stepped foot in the church. My mother and sister tried their best, but I was still not going to go back to church as they wanted me to. So after about some time that they tried and I had made up my mind about church and everything that had to do with church, my younger sister came visiting, and she told me about a program that happened to be a gospel program, and she is a part of the organization body. And as such, she wanted to give me a ticket so that I can come and witness it. I didn't want to turn her down, and so I did accept to be there. The program was about to be ended, and on the list of the people performing was one pastor who was supposed to be given a word of admonition. I had gone out to get something to drink when I heard the man talk about how God saved him and gave him a second chance in his kingdom. I returned to the place only to see this man who did cause me all my pain and grief. I got up and took a car back home. I honestly couldn't handle the pain as I watched him share with the people some of the things he has done. And he talked about what happened the night that the seed was planted in me. That was when I knew he was the one who caused me this pain and shame. I told my grandparents about it, and they called my younger sister to assist them in getting to know the whereabouts of the pastor.
Like I always say, these are not just stories for story's sake. They are meant for us not to make these mistakes our brothers and sisters are making. That's why we share these stories with you. After listening to this story, I will say that I leave everything to our viewers to foment and share their experiences with us, or if only you have experienced something like this. When we talk about religion, it becomes too a sensitive subject or topic to talk about with people. And so, I really restrain myself from commenting on such things. But one thing that I know is that, when something is destined to come your way, nothing in this world can stop it coming to reality. The only thing that can stop it from coming to pass will be you yourself and nobody else. The only thing that can be done will be to frustrate you, so you don't pursue what is yours. No demon or man born of a woman has any power of any creation of the Most High to stop what is theirs. And now to our parents here, even when your child does wrong, that is the most important time of the child's life to show him or her that you so much love him or her. And that you are ready to assist them in the next steps they will be taken, and not to make them feel betrayed by their own family. I just hope that we honestly take the important lessons from these stories to better our lives and decisions. I pray that we learn from some of these stories and live a better life. If not for anything at all, it pays to live a decent and better life. Stay blessed and be safe. Thanks for being a part of this growing family. Kindly share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. And if you are new here, please subscribe, like and share.